العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد على آله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه وجعلنا من أعوان الأنصار. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. As you know, today is the 5th session in which we study the origin of Shi'ism. And just to remind you, in the first session we told that Shi'ism just started during the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And we had two types of reasons. One was the general reasons in which we reasoned that the appearance of a group of followers of Imam Ali was quite natural and even necessary because of several facts, because of the words of the Prophet about Imam Ali and about his successorship, because of his services to Islam, because of his knowledge, and because that the Prophet said Ali is always with the truth and truth is with Ali and they will never separate each other. So all these facts made the appearance of Shia quite natural. And the second type of reason was a group of traditions in which the Prophet himself applied the term Shia to the followers of Imam Ali. And we mentioned some traditions from our Sunni brothers' sources. And it was interesting that in some of the traditions, the Prophet, instead of saying, your Shia, Shi'atuka, said our Shia, Shi'atuna, which indicates that the followers of Imam Ali are really the followers of the Prophet. And if Shia follow Imam Ali, it's because just the Prophet told them to do that. And we described the meaning of the term Shia literally and technically, and we told that Shia technically means those who believe in the successorship of Imam Ali just because the teachings of the Prophet and the existence of these advices or teachings of the Prophet, it's very important, what we call it in Arabic, nas. We believe that imamat should come through teachings of the Prophet. It's not the role of people to elect a person as their imam. And inshallah we shall speak about this in future more. In the following sessions we spoke about other hypotheses which try to find some other dates for the beginning of Shia. For example, some said that Shi'ism started just after the event of Saqifa. And we described the event from two main sources in the history of Tabari and the history by Yaqubi. And finally, we came to this conclusion that we cannot say that Shi'ism started at that time, but it was a case, Tarikh al-Umam wal-Muluk, which is written by Tabari, and we mentioned the story there, and we studied the chain of narrators, which was started by As-Sari. And we spoke about Sari and then about Shu'aib, and especially we focused on Saif ibn Umar, who was the main figure in this chain, and we told that according to Shia ulamas and Sunni ulamas, this person was not reliable, was not honest, and he was known to be creating some hadith from himself. And also we studied the content of the story, and we saw that it was not reasonable to believe that a person who was not a Muslim, who was just a Jewish man, who was living far from Medina and Mecca, because he was from Sana'a, to be able to change the ideas of great companions of the Prophet and do those jobs which are attributed to him. We said it seems quite miraculous. It's not something reasonable. And finally, we spoke about another hypothesis. We said that Shi'ism was founded by Iranians in one version, or Shi'ism was changed by Iranians, because there were two versions. Some said that Shi'ism was founded by Iranians as a reaction, resistance against Arabs' attacks to Islam, who wanted to carry Islam to Iran. And the second version was that Iranian gave another meaning, a political meaning to Shi'ism, and the idea of hierarchical rulership, the idea of monarchy was familiar to the minds of Iranians, and they carried it into Islam and presented the idea of imamate. And we discussed about this. Today, we want to go on with other hypotheses. And if, inshallah, Allah helps us, I try to finish this chapter today, and then, inshallah, we can be able to start another chapter. Some people believe that Shi'ism started during the war of Yemen. You know that a group of people who paid allegiance to Imam Ali, they didn't keep their allegiance, they broke their allegiance, and these people are called Naqithin. These people, such as Talha, Zubayr, and lots of others, first of all, they all paid allegiance to Imam Ali after the death of the third Caliph Osman. But after a short time, they started to protest Imam Ali, and especially they started to attribute the death of Osman to Imam Ali's party or Imam Ali himself. So finally they made a war, and in this war you know that Aisha took part, and you all know some details of the war. What is important for us is that, according to Ibn Nadim, who is the author of a famous book, and his book is called Al-Fihrist. Ibn Nadim, in his book Al-Fihrist, which speaks about the biographies of writers and about the books written in Islam, so it has something to say about the history, lives of the people, especially authors, and the books. In his book Al-Fihrist, page 263, he has a sentence which some people considered it as a clue to say that Shi'ism just started after the war of Jamal. I try to translate this sentence by Ibn Nadim into English and then see what does it indicate. He says, إن عليا قصد طلحة والزبير ليقاتلهما حتى يفيئا إلى أمر الله. He said, surely Ali asked Talha and Zubayr, surely Ali decided to fight against Talha and Zubayr to ask them to go back and return towards Allah's decree. It's a reference to a verse in the Holy Quran about the fight with those who are baghi, who are oppressors. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if some war happens among two groups of mu'mineen, the one which is oppressor should be put under pressure until it returns to Allah's decree. Anyway, Ibn Nadim says that Ali, may peace be upon him, decided to fight against Talha and Zubayr to make them return towards Allah's decree. Then he says, وَتَسَمَّى مَنِ اتَّبَعُهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ الشِّيعَةِ. Those who followed him in this event were called Shi'a, or got the title of Shi'a. وَكَانَ يَقُولُ شِيَعَتِي, and Ali was saying, my Shi'a. وَسَمَّاهُمْ, Ali called them Al-Asfiya, Al-Awliya, Shortatul Khamis, Al-Ashab. He says that Imam Ali divided his followers into 4 categories. Al-Awliya, Al-Asfiya, Shortatul Khamis, and finally Al-Ashab. Al-Asfiya, Al-Awliya, Shortatul Khamis, Al-Ashab. Al-Asfiya means the selected people. It's the plural form of Safi, and Safi means the selected, the chosen one. And Awliya is the plural form of Wali. Wali means friend, or sometimes means leader, and a person who has certain relationship with another one, a kind of friendship relationship, or a kind of fellowship relationship in some idea, some causes. Shortatul Khamis, it's very interesting that there were a group of followers of Imam Ali who were called Shortatul Khamis. And this title comes from the term shart. Shart in Arabic means condition. Yeah? Shart in Arabic means condition. There was a condition, and you can say a kind of contract between Imam Ali and a group of his followers. And that was that if these people obey Imam Ali's commands, Imam Ali will guarantee for them paradise. A kind of condition, a kind of contract between Imam Ali and these people. And I will quote the sentence of Imam Ali in this regard from our own sources. So, these groups were called Shortatul Khamis. And also Ashab means companions. So, Ibn Nadim says that when Imam Ali wanted to fight against Talha and Zubayr during the war of Jamal, those who followed him, who obeyed him, got the title of Shi'a. And Imam Ali was saying, my Shi'a, was calling them my Shi'a, and was categorizing them into Al-Awliya, Al-Asfiya, Shortatul Khamis, and Al-Ashab. This has led some Orientalists, such as Wellhausen, to say that Shi'ism started during the war of Jamal. But what we say is that because of all reasons which we had before, Shi'ism started during the life of the Prophet. And if you want to have a particular criticism about this idea, of course we are not in need of such criticism because we have proved that Shi'ism has started during the life of the Prophet and we showed documents for that. But if we want just to have some focus on this idea, we should tell that Ibn Nadim has borrowed this from a Shia source, and that is Rajal by Al-Barqi. Text of Al-Barqi, you will confirm that there is very exceptional similarity between these two sentences, and it's quite clear that he has borrowed this from a Shia source. The person is called Al-Barqi. And his book is called Rajal. Rajal is the title of a special science, Islamic science, which studies the positions of the narrators of tradition. But this book is called Rajal because of its subject matter. Rajal by Al-Barqi. Al-Barqi's text, which I have here from his book, is to be found in his book, page 3. And it's interesting to know that Al-Barqi died 274 or 280 after Hijrah. But Ibn Nadim died 378 after Hijrah and wrote his book 377, 1 year before his death. So about 100 years before Ibn Nadim, we find this sentence in the book of Al-Barqi. Al-Barqi says, أصحاب أمير المؤمنين من أصحاب رسول الله الأصحاب ثم الأصفياء ثم الأولياء ثم شرطة الخميس. The same categories. He says, companions of Imam Ali. Among the companions of the Prophet are 4 groups. Al-Ashab, Al-Asfiya, Al-Awliya, Shortat al-Hamis. The same 4 groups which Ibn Nadim mentions. You can find them in the book by Al-Mardi. And it's interesting that he gives more details which Ibn Nadim didn't mention. He tries to mention them by names. So he says, من الأصفياء من أصحاب أمير المؤمنين. Those who were Asfiya, the selected one, are Salman al-Farsi, Al-Miqdad, Abu Zar, Ammar, Abu Layla, Bashir, Abu Sanan, Abu Umre, Abu Sa'id al-Khudari, Abu Barzeh, Jabir ibn Abdullah, Al-Bara ibn Azib, and finally he mentions Araf al-Azdi, about whom the Prophet said, Barakallah lahu fi safqateh. And this man made a deal for the Prophet, and the Prophet asked Allah to bless his deals, his purchase. So he mentions these people among the companions of Imam Ali, who were also companions of the Prophet. And it's interesting that some of these people died before the caliphate of Imam Ali. For example, Salman died before the death of Osman. So certainly it was before the war of Jamal. Miqdad also died before that. Abu Zar died before that. So, how can we say that Shi'ism just started after the war of Jamal, while we have great figures of Shia died before the caliphate of Imam Ali? And you cannot find anything in the main source about the title of Shia, that Shi'ism started after this war, or a group of followers of Imam Ali got the title of Shia after this war. In the main source, you cannot find this. So Ibn Nadim has borrowed this story from Al-Barghi, but in the main source, the original one, you cannot find this sentence. So we don't know how he has put this sentence. And anyway, even if we say that Ibn Nadim had some sources to say that these people who followed Imam Ali got the title of Shia, by no means it indicates that there were no Shia before that. Yeah? It just says that those who followed Imam Ali after the war of Jamal and obeyed him got the title of Shia. So it means that they added to the previous Shia. It doesn't mean that there were no records of Shiism before that. So even if we accept the truth of Ibn Nadim's sentence, we should say that it doesn't mean that there were no Shia before that. I think this is enough about the fourth hypothesis. Now we can study the fifth one. I try to finish this chapter today, inshallah. The fifth one is that Shi'ism started after the war of Siffin. And when we refute the previous ones, the refutation of the next one becomes more easier, because when you don't accept that Shi'ism, for example, was founded in the 30th year after after Hijrah. So how can you say that in 32nd, 33rd? Yeah. So all these are, in fact, free from any need to be refuted. Anyway, some people say that after the war of Siffin, when Imam Ali finally had to accept the event of judgment, the event of tahkim. You know that Imam Ali, first of all, didn't want to accept that. And the army of Imam Ali was more likely to win the war. But unfortunately, Amr As made a trick and asked Muawiyah's soldier to raise the copies of the Holy Quran on their spears. So those ignorant people in the army of Imam Ali said, "Oh, we are fighting with Muslims." And they put pressure upon Imam Ali and said to him, "If you don't ask Malik Ashtar to be back as soon as possible, we will kill you." And Malik Ashtar first of all refused that because he was a few steps far from the Muawiyah's camp, and he was able to kill Muawiyah very soon. But Imam Ali sent him a message and said that if you want to visit me again, come back. So he came back, and finally they said that there should be a person selected from Imam's side and a person selected from Muawiyah's side to negotiate with each other and put an end for this war between Muslims. And again they put pressure upon Imam Ali to select Abu Musa Ash'ari, who was not a clever man, who was not a politician. Salam. He was a very simple-minded man. And Amr As was selected by Muawiyah, who was very shrewd and very clever and very tricky one. So these two people, after a negotiation, decided to go to public and say that Muawiyah and Ali are the sources of the problems for Muslims, the sources of the conflict. So we have to dismiss both of them. So, first of all, Abu Musa was to say this. So Abu Musa went there and said that I dismiss Ali from Khilafat as I take away my rings from my finger. So in this way, by taking out his rings from his finger, he dismissed Imam Ali. And Amr ibn As went there and instead of dismissing Muawiyah, said, by putting on my rings, I am assigning Muawiyah as the Caliph of Muslims. So, in this way, people understood that they were deceived. But what was the reaction of those ignorant followers of Imam Ali? They started to say to Imam Ali, why did you accept this judgment? Why did you accept this negotiation? First of all, they put pressure upon Imam Ali to accept that. And when they saw that they were deceived, they said, why did you accept? There is no judgment, there is no decree except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La hukma illa lillah. So these people who were called Khawarij appeared after the war of Siffin. So, when Imam Ali's army went back to Kufa, there were two groups. One were the followers of Imam Ali who were still obeying him, and one were Khawarij. And also the army of Muawiyah, who were followers of Muawiyah, went back to Damascus. So, this theory says that Shia are those who followed Ali, who obeyed him after the war of Siffin. Just opposite to the Shia of Muawiyah who obeyed him after the war of Siffin. So there were three groups: Shia of Imam Ali, Shia of Muawiyah, and Khawarij. For example, these people try to use this part of the history of Tabari, Tarikh al-Umam wal-Muluk, as the document for that. I have here the text of the history of Tabari. It's from the 5th volume, page 64. Of course, it's in Arabic. I will translate it into English. Tabari says it's about what happened in the year 37 after Hijrah. He says, لما قدم علي الكوفة وفارقته الخوارج وثبت إليه الشيعة. When Ali entered Kufa and Khawarij left him and Shia kept being with him and said, في أعناقنا بيعة ثانية. Shia said, it's our duty today to pay a second allegiance to Imam, to reinforce our obedience, to reinforce our allegiance. They said, نحن أولياء من واليت وأعداء من عاديت. They said, we are friends of those who have friendship with them, and we are enemies of those who are your enemies. And then he goes on that some people protested them that you shouldn't say this, you should just say that we follow the book of Allah and this tradition, the sunnah of the Prophet. And then they defended from this and said, yes, we just were saying we follow the book of Allah and the tradition of the Prophet, but because you didn't want to obey the Caliph Imam Ali and you broke your allegiance, so just to emphasize on the necessity of obedience of us towards Imam Ali, we are saying that we are friends of your friends and enemies of your enemies. Anyway, what is important is that part which said, when Ali entered Kufa and Khawarij left him and Shia kept being with him. So they say, look, Tabari says Shia appeared in this time. But again, you see, it's quite simple to refute this. Tabari doesn't say that Shia appeared at this time. It said, Sabata ilayhi Shia. So it means that there were Shia, but they kept being with him. So I think it's not difficult to refute this hypothesis, and it's very easy in fact. And just to supplement what we have said, we can say that there were certainly Shia before the caliphate of Imam Ali, during the life of the Prophet and after that. But between the death of the Prophet and the caliphate of Imam Ali, Shia were not exercising their ideas and practices in public very clearly. They were under pressure and they didn't want to propagate for their ideas and protest the caliphs because of Islamic unity, Islamic brotherhood. After the caliphate of Imam Ali, Shia got more freedom and more place for activities. But it doesn't mean that all people who were paying allegiance to Imam Ali, all people who were participating in his wars, all his soldiers were Shia. No, there were some people in the army of Imam Ali who were not Shia, but just were obeying him because they paid allegiance to him. Those who were Shia, they kept being with him. Those who were not Shia didn't have deep faith in this kind of understanding of Islam, which they believe that it's the real Islam. By some events, by some problems, sometimes they broke their allegiance and they took some kind of distance from Imam Ali's ideas. But those who were Shia and who had this kind of idea in advance before the caliphate of Imam Ali, they were more strong in their faith and they didn't change easily. The next hypothesis is that Shi'ism was just founded by some kings. And in particular, they mention 3 types of hypotheses. And because I want to be economical in our time, I try to study all of them in one study. You know that there were a group of Shia rulers, Shia kings, who were called Al-Buye, or the correct one is better to say Al-Bowai, and in English they call them Buyids, kings. These kings were ruling parts of Iran between 320 and 447 after Islam. It's almost about 950 according to the Christian calendar, the start of the kingdom. These kings were Shia, and they ruled parts of Iran such as Ray and such as, for example, Kerman, some parts of Iran. And they were some just and fair kings, as the history shows. And they were very respectful towards ulama, Sunni or Shia. It was not just exclusive to Shia ulama. They were very respectful even to Sunni scholars. And they tried to develop the country. They built lots of buildings and public places. And there were some poems who were going to their courts and saying prayers and developing literature. Sometimes it's said that because these people were Shia, so they originated, they founded the idea of Shi'ism in Iran. And they are the founders of Shi'ism. But as you see, it's quite ridiculous to say this, because these people just came after 300, or some of them after 400, after the start of Islam. And there were lots of Shia scholars, lots of Shia books, Shia sources, Shia collections of traditions before that. You cannot say that Shiism was founded by them. It's quite baseless to say that. And I think it's not necessary to speak about this more. And it's worse than this to say that Shiism was founded by Sultan Muhammad Khudavandi, who was one of the Mongols kings who ruled Iran. You know, some of the Mongols became Muslim, but they were Sunni. But this man, who were at first Hanafi, Khudavandi. This man at first was Hanafi, but after some particular events, he inclined toward Shafi'i school. But he was bored with discussions between Hanafis and Shafi'is. He was confused and didn't want to obey them. And finally, he had a private, personal problem. And that was that once he became angry with his wife and divorced her wife 3 times in one session. And according to Sunni schools of jurisprudence, fiqh, this talaq is complete. And there is no way to return except after muhallil. It means that another person should get married with this wife and then divorce her, then the previous husband can get married with this one. So it was not good for king to see his wife get married with another one. He asked all ulamas, Hanafis, Shafi'is, Malikis, Hanbalis, to find some solution for that. They said there is no solution. And after a while, they said there is a man who claims some knowledge in Helle, and he is Rafizi. This is what they say to Shia. And he has strange ideas, he might be able to solve your problem. And when they asked Allama Helli to go there, it was Allama Helli. His name is Yusuf, the son of Mudahar. But it's famous to say Helli. So Allama Helli went there, and there was a great gathering. There was a special place for the king, and Sunni scholars were there. When Allama Helli entered, he took his shoes with him and didn't put them there, and said salam and didn't do sajdah for the king, and went and sat just beside the king, because they didn't want to give any place for him, so there was only vacant place beside the king, and he went and sat. So some people who were there, some scholars, started complaining that how rude and impolite is this man. He didn't do sajdah, he took his shoes with himself, and he just sat beside next to the king. So the king said, you can ask him to see whether he has some reason or not. And Allama Helli said that I said just salam because the best greeting in Islam is salam, and the Prophet of Islam was a ruler, a king, but people didn't say more than salam to him. And I didn't do sajdah for you because we have to do sajdah only for Allah. So if we do sajda for king, it's forbidden. And I sat next to you because there was no other vacant place. So we have to sit somewhere. And I took my shoes with me because I was afraid that if I leave my shoes there, Hanafi scholars might steal these as Abu Hanifa stole the shoes of the Prophet. Then Hanafi scholars said he's telling some lie because Abu Hanifa was 100 years after the Prophet. So he said, excuse me, it was Shafi'i who did that. And then Shafi'i said, it's not possible because when Abu Hanifa died, just Shafi'i was born. So he said, excuse me, it was Malik. And again they said it was not possible, Malik was later, and also Ibn Hanbal. So he said to the king, look, all these people admit that they follow some imams who didn't visit the Prophet, who didn't meet the Prophet. They were just quite later. But we follow Ali, who was the brother of the Prophet, the successor of the Prophet, who was very close to him, and actually he was brought up by the Prophet. And the king was very amazed and very interested by such argumentation. And about the divorce, he said that we believe that your divorce is not complete because there should be two just witnesses there. And were there two witnesses there? He said no, because me and my wife. There were no witnesses there. And also he said that 3 divorces in one session is not acceptable. It's just considered as one, according to Shia faith. So Shia became quite happy, and finally he became Shia. And it's written that he issued a command to remove the names of first 3 caliphs from the coins which were used in Iran, and just have the name of the 4th caliph, Imam Ali, on that. But finally there was some resistance because Iran were as a majority Sunni. So his commanders on Shiraz and some other cities resisted. So he withdrew and said, okay, leave it. And he couldn't make Shiism an official religion in Iran. But anyway, because he was Shia, he gave some support to Shia. And it said that he used to ask Allama Hilli to be always with him. So when he was traveling, he was considering a camp for Allama Hilli and his pupils, his students, to go with him. And this man was given a bad title by enemies of Shia. And they said to him, instead of Khudabande, something bad in Persian, they said Kharbande. Means instead of the Allah, they said servant of donkey to him. And his Mongol name was Al-Jaito. Al-Jaito Muhammad Khudabande. Anyway, this man was in the 7th century, and as you saw, there is no reason to say that he founded Shiism. He just gave some support to Shia ulama. And the final idea is about the Safavids kingdom. Inshallah for the next session. These kings, Safavids, they were first of all a group of Sufis who were living in Azerbaijan, in Iran. And the great man in this family was Sheikh Safavids Ardebili. In that time, Iran was suffering conflicts, civil wars between Sunnis, Shi'a, all were conflicting with each other because there was no strong government in Iran. In all provinces, there were small governments, and finally, Shah Ismail, who was from this family, Safavids, he was able to conquer all Iran. He established a strong government, strong rulership, strong kingdom in Iran. In the year 905 after Hijrah. It's about 1500 according to Christian calendar. And he was ruling Iran for about 25 years, something like that. When he saw that Iranians are suffering from disagreements, civil war, ethnic and religious conflicts, he decided to solve the problem by declaring Shi'ism as the only officially recognized religion of Iran. So from this time, the majority of people in Iran became Shia, because Shi'ism was the official religion. King was Shia and was encouraging people to be Shia. So lots of Iranians became Shia, and there was good movement there, and that was that a group of Shia scholars, great Shia scholars from Lebanon, from Jabal Ahmed, went to Iran, and they started to teach people teachings of Ahlul Bayt, and in this way there was a kind of cultural revolution in Iran. And these great scholars such as Sheikh Bahai, they were originally from Lebanon, but they went to Iran and started to propagate and to preach for Shi'ism. Again, you cannot say that Shi'ism was founded by these people, but you can say that these people helped Shia, supported Shia, and in the end, we can say that, as we were saying, Shi'ism was just founded during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and some special events gave sometimes support or strength to Shia. Here I have a short notes I have written in English. I want to read it very fast to supplement what I have said, and if you want to have short notes. Yeah. And inshallah, I might explain on the map as well. The fourth theory claims that the group Shia appeared during the War of Jamal. Ali, may peace be upon him, was caliph at that time. But some people refused this right after paying allegiance. And this group were called Naqithin, meaning those who broke their promise, their allegiance. According to Ibn Nadim, in his book Al-Fihrist, which is one of the earliest books to express history, dates, books, and lives of writers, When Imam Ali moved towards Basra to fight against Talha and Zubayr, who had turned the people against Imam Ali, those who followed him got the title of Shia. And then he goes on and said that Imam Ali was saying, my Shia, and Imam Ali called them Al-Asfiya, Al-Awliya, Shortatul Khamis, Al-Ashab. Some Orientalists, such as Wellhausen, agree with this theory and say that when Osman died, two parties were formed. The party of Muawiyah and the party of Ali. And in Arabic, the party is called Shi'a. But after some time, Muawiyah's group no longer were given this title. And it became exclusive to Imam Ali's followers. What Ibn Nadim says is borrowed from Al-Barqi, who died in 270 or 280 after Hijrah. And Ibn Nadim died in 378, but finished his book in 377 after Hijrah. Therefore, we see that Barqi's book, Rajab, was written about 1 century earlier than Ibn Nadim's book. And in Barqi's book, you cannot find this sentence that those who followed Imam Ali after this one got the title of Shia. And as I told you, even if we believe in that, we say that it doesn't mean that there were no Shia before that. It means that these people added to those who were Shia in advance. In the 5th theory, we find the emphasis on the War of Siffin. Some Orientalists claim that Shia appeared during this war, when there was a likely victory for Imam Ali. Muawiyah and his assistant Amr ibn As raised the Quran on spears. Some of the people on Imam's side, when seeing this, did not want to fight, saying that we are all Muslims and we do not want to kill Muslims, raising the Quran. So, these people who were called Khawarij, they didn't obey Imam Ali, and they say that those who followed Ali after this event were called Shia. And again, we said that it doesn't mean that Shiism started at that time. In the 6th theory, it's claimed that Shia appeared during the kingdom of Umayyad's rulers, who ruled in parts of Iran, such as Kerman and Hamadan, which is likely here, and Isfahan and Ray. This central part of Iran, and also Iraq. They ruled also Iraq between 320 and 447. These were Shia rulers. They had some services for Shia and all Muslims, and they were very polite and respectful to all Muslims. And unfortunately, this kingdom was destroyed and ruined in very bad manner by Salajid, another kind of kingdom, family. And these were Sunnis, and of course it doesn't mean that our Sunni brothers approved what this Sunni kingdom did, but anyway, these were very bad with Shia, and they destroyed the library of Sheikh Tusi in the city of Najaf, and they burnt lots of precious books, lots of documents which were very crucial for Muslims and especially for Shia. But these were very respectful to Sunnis and Shia, all Muslims. Of course, we do not want to say that kingdom in Islam or in Shiism is okay or is not okay. What they have did as kings, it's up to themselves, and Allah will judge about that. The seventh theory was that Shiism was founded by the king Muhammad Khudabande in the 7th century. And again, as we told, this man, although had some services to Shia, but he didn't found Shiism. Shia had scholars, Shia had books, Shia had schools, everything. And as you saw, that how did he become Shia? It's quite clear that he couldn't found Shia. And finally, the eighth and last theory is about Safavids. After the Mongol government was destroyed, Iran was separated into many small parts with many governments. There was no one strong government. Some of these governments were Shia, others were not. In 905 after Hijrah, Shah Ismail came to power and ruled over many parts of Iran. In 906, he conquered the whole of Iran, and in official ceremony, he became the official king of Iran. When he came into power, he saw that Iran was suffering from being broken into many groups, ideas, and religions. He then declared Shiism as the official religion of Iran, and due to that, many people accepted Shiism. In 1135, this family was destroyed by Afghans who attacked Iran. Again, we can say that Shia appeared in this time, the 10th century. It was too late to say that Shiism appeared at that time. These conclude our discussion on the theories dealing with the origin of Shiism. And inshallah, in the next session, we will start a new chapter, and that will be about the Shia sources in understanding Islam. We will speak about the role of the Holy Quran. What do Shia believe about the Holy Quran? About the role of tradition, the Sunnah of the Prophet, the role of Ahlul Bayt, the role of the companions of the Prophet, the role of intellect, aql. And we will have reference, a hint toward the role of ijma. And inshallah, after that there will be another chapter about the exclusive ideas of Shia, such as Ismat, such as Bada, such as Raj'ah, and all these things. And then inshallah, after that, there will be a chapter about the exclusive practical laws of Shia, such as temporary marriage, such as doing sajda on the turba, such as saying 2 prayers in one time without interruption, and lots of things like that. And inshallah, at the end, there will be a chapter about main Shia sources in different fields of Islamic sciences. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.